Welcome back again to the Sprockets database training. Just a reminder, if you want to follow along, the login information is up on your screen. So at this point in the training, we've covered data privacy, adding a program to the database, adding participants to the database, and now you're ready to add some demographic information to your participants. So once you have a participant record up in the database, you can add some additional demographic information to it. One thing to be careful about in a participant record is that everything here in this basic information section, so everything under this first blue header, is shared across sites in the Sprockets database. So anything that you change in this top section will be changed for anyone in any organization who's working with that participant. So you want to be very careful if you change anything here that you're sure that you're right. If you're pretty sure that the birth date is wrong, you're welcome to change it, but you just want to make very sure, because when you change that birth date, you're going to change it for everybody. Same thing with the name. If you have a youth, for example, that often goes by a nickname, it's best to put the nickname here in this nickname field, or to just put it in parentheses or quotation marks next to the first name, rather than deleting the first name and replacing it with the nickname, just because that'll make it difficult for other people who are working with that participant to find them. School name is another field that's shared across sites. You'll notice when you click on it that there's a big long drop down. It should be all of the charter and public schools in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and should be most of the private schools as well. And you can search for it just by typing. So if I'm searching for Jackson Elementary, I can just start typing Jackson and it'll jump down to Jackson on the list. If you do have a school that you don't see on the list, for example, a youth who's coming in from the suburbs, or maybe the youth is homeschooled, you can just type the word other into this dropdown. And then once you do that, you'll see that this other school field below opens up, and then you can type in that they're homeschooled or they're going to school in the suburbs or whatever. Grade level is also on here. One thing to be aware of is that since we do have a data sharing agreement with St. Paul Public Schools, youth who go to St. Paul Public Schools will have their grade level updated by the school district. However, if you have a youth who goes to charter schools, private schools, schools in Minneapolis, you will have to go in and update the grade for them. So if you have a lot of youth who come back year after year, you'll want to plan a little time at the beginning of the school year to go in and make sure that those grades get updated. And then if you scroll on down, so everything except this basic information section is specific just to your site. So everything from data release on down is not shared with any other organizations, and you're welcome to change it without having to worry about it affecting anyone else's reports. So this data release section, photo release is just for internal use. This consent obtained for research question is the one that we talked about in the section of the training about data privacy. This is marked yes for everyone when you first create them. But if you do have a youth where the youth or the parent wants to opt out of being part of the citywide evaluation, that's where you want to go in and mark that youth as no. So if you have that signed opt-out form on file, you want to make sure to go into the record in the database and mark them as no. That's how Sprockets will know to leave that person out of the citywide counts. Otherwise, if they've not opted out, you just want to leave them as yes. So scrolling on down to the demographics section, this is a section that you're really going to want to have filled out, because most reports to funders about your program are going to ask at least about the racial breakdown of your youth, the gender, and often will ask about zip code or county counts as well. So that's where you're going to fill in that information. This first section, race ethnicity, the way we do it in the Sprockets database is multi-select. So you can pick multiple races for youth who are multiracial. And then you also have the option of tracking specific cultural groups. So for programs who do want to track specifically that they're working, say, with a lot of Hmong youth or a lot of Somali youth, or who need to split for funder purposes, African American and African born youth, need to split those up in their funding reports, you're able to do that here. You'll notice that if you check either Asian or Black under race, you then have the option of these subcategories down here, which are specific cultural groups. So if I check here, I can track that I'm working with Hmong youth, Karen youth, Somali youth, lots of those different cultural groups that you can track down there. The one thing that we do want to be really careful about, we always want race in the Sprockets database to be self-reported by the youth or the parent. We definitely don't want staff looking at youth and just trying to guess what their race is. So if you don't ask that question on your forms, please just mark unknown. Same thing if you ask the question and a youth prefers not to report, it's totally fine to just mark their race as unknown. That's definitely preferable to a guess. Home language is another thing that a lot of programs like to track so that you know what language to send mailings home in. We have a very short list of languages here, and then you always have the option of selecting other and typing in another language. Gender is another field that we strongly encourage you to fill out, both for funding purposes and for citywide reporting. Primary address, this can be a little bit confusing because the way we do it in the Sprockets database is a little different from what you might see other places, and that's that we split the street name into 3 parts. So if this person lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, I'd put 1600 in the first line, then Pennsylvania Avenue in the second line, and then if there's an apartment number, you'd put that in the third line, rather than having it all together. That makes it a little bit easier to do some citywide mapping that we do. It also gives you access to a really nice report. There's a report in the Sprockets database where you can print a youth's name and address directly onto the mailing label stickers that most organizations use. So rather than having to put it in a spreadsheet, do a mail merge, you can actually, there's a report called Mailing Labels that'll line up right with the standard mailing labels. You can print directly from the database onto those mailing label stickers and save yourself a lot of time. However, we have found that that mailing label report doesn't always find youth if there isn't something in the house building number and something in the street name. So you want to make sure that you fill out both of these lines rather than just putting all of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in this first line to make sure that that mailing labels report finds your youth. So you have the street address here. City's going to default to St. Paul, but you have all of the metro area cities in here. Or if one isn't in there, you can always pick other and type it in. Same thing with counties. And then you will need to enter the zip code. Phone numbers in here as well. And then if you do work with older youth and you have some youth who don't live with their parents, you have the option here of checking who lives at this address. And then you can put a second address down below. School services then is what's at the bottom of this first tab of the youth record. A lot of organizations will ask about youth receiving free reduced lunch, whether they have an IEP, and whether they're getting ELL services. You can track that there. That is not filled in by the school district. That's something that you'll only have access to if you ask the youth. But you have the ability to track it there. And then you want to make sure to hit save. We really advise hitting save a lot when you're entering participant data. One thing that we've noticed is that when you're on a participant record and entering information here, if you accidentally bump something over on this left navigation bar, it doesn't save your work and it doesn't warn you that it's not going to save your work. It just goes to the tab you clicked on and you lose everything since your last save. So you want to make sure when you're entering participant data to hit save a lot to make sure that you don't accidentally bump something and lose all of your work. So this first general tab is going to have just about everything that you're going to be reporting to funders and everything that Sprockets is going to use in its citywide report. Race, gender, address, all those basic pieces are here. There are also some additional tabs that you have up here for tracking more program management related information. We won't spend a ton of time on that in the training, but I just want to make sure that you're aware that those are there. So on the additional tab, this is a place where you can track youth cell phone and email for contacting the youth directly, how they get to and from your program if you need to plan transportation. Different kinds of permission are here. Health information is on this tab, school information if you're connected with the schools, and then emergency contact information is all on this tab. Basically, nothing on here is required. Everything is just fill in what's useful to you, ignore everything else. Same thing with the family tab at the top. This tab lets you connect siblings together in a family. So if you're a program that works with lots of lots of families, lots of groups of siblings, this can be a nice way to enter the parent information just once and then connect all of the siblings to that parent information. So the way that that would work, if I knew that my youth here was already connected to an existing family, I could just use the drop down here, pick the family that she's a part of, hit link, and then she's connected to all that information. So then when I click on the family name, I'd be able to see if I'd entered parent information. You can track income bracket and household type if your funders require that. And then down here, you can see all of the siblings connected to that family. So it's a quick way to get a count of how many households you serve, if that's something that you need to track. And also just to have parent information connected to all of the siblings in that family. If she weren't already connected to a family, what I'd do is just click Create Family up here. I'd get a blank version of that form we just saw, fill out all the parent information, and then any subsequent siblings that join the program, you could connect to that family. So that's the basics of adding information to a new participant record. In the next section of the training, we're going to move on to this enrollment tab and learn how to enroll your youth in your program and then also to drop them when they leave.